Welcome to another episode of Foresight TV. I am so excited. I've got Shasta Nelson with me today, and she's got this proposition that says that friendship is a life or death thing. So we're going to jump into that in just one moment. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Hey Shasta, welcome.
Hello, thank you. That was a very fun little video you had.
Yeah, I've got a great social media. I've got a great team, and they put that together, and we've been using it for about a year, and they've even gotten the little crooked glasses thing right, and so it's really fun. So we're going to talk about friendship today, and I'm going to confess that I am a friendship junkie. I'm kind of one of those people that probably never has enough friends, but I also like sort of deep friendship. And you've got this proposition that says that friendship is a life and death matter. So, but actually, before we actually jump into that, I'm going to leave that as a tease. So why don't you talk a little bit about who you are and what you do?
So I've been studying relationships most of my life, but it was probably 12 years ago when I just kept seeing a reoccurring theme among like highly successful people. When I would ask them, who are your friends? Who's supporting you? What are the people around you saying about this situation? And almost to a person, I just kept hearing people say, well, I don't really talk about this with anybody, or, well, I've moved, or I've gone through a divorce. And, I just feel like that, basically I just kept hearing that they're not confiding in people. They don't really have these close relationships. And I started kind of looking into the research around that and said, we are so obsessed with like the parent child relationships and romantic relationships, but there was hardly any books out on friendship, on like how to build those platonic relationships. And it really just got me super interested, where I just kind of started just saying, why is nobody talking about this? And you can only hear yourself say that so many times before you start being like, well, I can at least write a blog about it, And so it's like starts as a small thing. But yeah, for 12 years now, I've written 3 books. I've run a friendship network community. I lead retreats. I take people on trips all around the world for the purpose of meeting each other and traveling. And I speak and consult with companies now. But everything I do, it's like so disparate, but it's all under the umbrella of helping connect people, helping us increase the belonging in our lives.
So I really like this a lot. And it's interesting because before you did the little seminar here in the Sacramento area that I attended a couple of 3 months ago, I've been thinking about this, and I am friendly with a lot of fairly significant people in the senior living space. And I look at them and I think, I'd like to be friends with them. And then I go, nah, they already have enough friends. And so I started actually checking in with people and saying,
Mm.
so do you have any close friends? And
Mm.
it's fascinating that people don't. And I actually think
Mm.
I do better than most. But let's talk about this life and death thing.
Yeah, well, no, to your point though, right? When you're talking about that, that is very common right now. It's well, not just right now, even before the pandemic, 61% of us are reporting feeling lonely on a pretty regular basis. So that would be the equivalent of us walking around saying that I'm hungry and not getting enough food much of the time. 61% of us.
Wow.
When we feel lonely, it's our body telling us that we have the need for more connection, just the same way our body tells us we're hungry or we need sleep or that we're thirsty. And it's not a problem to feel lonely, just like it's not a problem to be tired. It's a problem if you don't get that need met, right? It becomes a very life and death problem if you don't get food, if you don't get the sleep you need, and if you don't get the relationships that you need. And so it really does. That's where the big problems start really playing out. It's not just feeling lonely, but right now we have a world really, and our culture that has gotten used to being lonely. And it's almost like they say you don't know what you'd feel like if you were totally hydrated. Like most of us are walking around sleep deprived and not enough water. We're walking around, most of us, lonely. And half of everybody does not have anybody to confide in. If you take away like a romantic partner, I mean, men especially, very vulnerable to having nobody to confide in or feel like anybody really knows them. We've trained men in this culture, unfortunately, we've done a huge disservice, like not encouraging men to have meaningful, deep, intimate relationships with each other. We've basically told them, and the only safe place for that is in romance. And so, yeah, we've got a lot of loneliness out there. And I mean, we've got people coming out of the pandemic feeling isolated, feeling socially insecure, feeling very stressed around people. It's really, really a big, big deal. Yeah. So that
So,
what you're seeing from people is that's very, unfortunately, very common.
so I want to two areas that I want to explore. I'm going to let you pick which one that you would prefer to talk about first. The probably the most important, and maybe the way we could best serve the audience, is that if I'm feeling that way, how do I fix that? But the second question I have that occurred to me as you're talking is part of the problem, unrealistic expectations of how much friendship we should have because of what happens on TV and movies and social media.
Yeah, I mean, both of those are really, really important. I think before we can solve the problem and say, here's what we can do, I do think we need to all feel it more and feel like recognize the need. Emotional intelligence tells us that we can do two things. It's the ability to name what we're feeling and then do
Okay.
something about it, right? And so I think maybe even, I don't know, maybe if you let me even just go back to your life and death thing, I would love to kind of hammer
Okay,
that
let's
home a
do that.
tiny
Let's
bit.
do that.
Let's hammer that home because the research is showing that if we feel disconnected on a regular basis and don't get the need met, it's worse on our bodies than if we smoke 15 cigarettes a day. It's twice as harmful as being obese. It does the equivalent damage on our body as if we were a lifelong alcoholic. It's worse than not exercising. There's another study that took people who had a healthy lifestyle, and it was defined by what they ate, their exercise, and not smoking, versus those who did not have a healthy lifestyle habit, and then those who felt connected and those who felt disconnected. And it's fascinating when they look at that, it won't surprise any of us that the people who were most likely to live the longest and be healthiest were those who had the healthy lifestyle habits and felt connected. But the second healthiest group were those who had unhealthy lifestyle habits and felt connected. They performed better than the people who had healthy lifestyle habits and felt disconnected. And so we really have done an incredible disservice in many ways. Another place is with our health messaging and our health magazines. They like, if you just learn how to do your stomach crunch this way, if you just practice doing reps this way, if you just put this in your smoothie, if you just drink this kind of celery juice, and all of that's great. But if you're lonely, the damage on your body is literally the wear and tear of feeling lonely, of not feeling supported, of not feeling seen is so damaging that I'll just end by saying we've got doctors going on record regularly now, including the US Surgeon General, who are saying that the number one public health issue of our time is loneliness. And it's as the biggest killer. We don't put that on our death certificates yet, but it's killing more people than heart disease and diabetes and all the other things. It's exacerbating and it's killing us in so many other ways. So it really is becoming, I'll end with this, the most important question we can ask about your health if we want to predict how you'll, like the quality of your life will be 20 years out, is how loved and supported do you feel in your life right now? And how you answer that question right now tells us more about your health than anything else you can be doing.
Wow. Wow. So, so
I
that
know. Where do we go from that?
well, it's both exciting because it, in some sense, it suggests that it's fixable, but it's a little scary because there are a lot of people out there that I think are lonely, and I don't think they're lonely because they want to be lonely. They're lonely because they don't know what to do about it. So,
Yeah.
what does somebody do about that?
Yeah, I appreciate you naming that. And unfortunately, if we're hungry, we can go open the fridge, right? And we can almost feel like we can get that need met on our own. And this need is a hard one. And it's unfortunately, it's like a vicious cycle. I feel like the lonelier we are, the less likely we are to go get that need met because we tend to withdraw. We feel like more threatened by everybody. We feel less empathy. So yeah, it's a harder one to fill. I would say first, just be super gentle with yourself. Take away all shame. It is nothing wrong with you that you are lonely. It is the way our world is set up to do. I mean, it's just, this is, most people are lonely. And that's to just remove all shame. It has nothing to do with not being likable. And here's the interesting thing is some of the loneliest people have the most friends. So it's not even about, we're not talking about a lonely person because you're isolated and a recluse. We're talking about you can be lonely and be popular. You can be lonely and have a big social network. You can be lonely and go hang out with people all the time. But if you're not confiding in them, if you're not feeling close to them, if you're not feeling like you're seeing the same people over and over enough, our loneliness, leaders are lonely. People who own companies are lonely, or people who are in leadership feel like nobody else knows what they're going through. Our employees are lonely. They're coming to work and they're coming to work lonely. They're leaving work lonely. So first, just take away all the shame. And then I would say, once we name that we need that need met, then we just need to say, I need to find ways to get that need met. And I can teach, on here what it looks like to build a healthy relationship if we want to go that route, or if we want to just kind of talk about some first steps. But really, the biggest, hardest thing is to say, we can't keep doing the same thing and expecting different results, right? So that's the hardest thing, is that what we crave are deep friendships. And unfortunately, what most of us have to do to get there, it's kind of awkward. We have to go invite people to things. We have to reach out. We have to, those are hard and vulnerable things to do. And so I think it's kind of knowing that you have this need, that it matters to you, that it is life or death, and that we kind of have to build up our muscles, if you will, for building more relational health in our lives.
So my heart's already broken because I've got about 19 minutes with you, and I think I need about 3 hours. So
I know.
this is
I
really,
could
I'm
talk
trying to.
about this for 3 hours.
I'm really sort of my head. I mean, so I think that I guess I'm going to go where there are three areas that I really like. Right. I mean, the first is, if I'm lonely, how do I start? Right. I mean, it used to be churches. For some people today, it's bars and clubs. But sometimes those are not necessarily, either one of those are not necessarily automatically great places to build friendships. So where do I start? The second question is if I get started, how do I not blow up? How do I make that friendship actually turn into something meaningful? And then the third thing that you just touched on a little bit, and I think maybe is actually the place I want to spend the most time exploring, given my audience, is the people who work as a part of my organization are lonely. And so if I've got people working for me, I may not even be sort of specifically aware that they're lonely, but I know that they maybe don't necessarily like coming to work. And there is some data, as you know, that suggests if you got friends at work that you like your work more. So how do I help my team?
Yeah, I love all of those questions. And let me at least answer the first one quickly and jump to that
Well,
third one for you. The first one is, where do we go when we feel lonely? Most of us, this is the good news. Most of us, when we're lonely, it's not because we don't know anybody. It's not because we don't have any friends. Most of us, when we're lonely, it's because it's not for need of more interaction, it's for need of more intimacy. So most of us, when we're feeling lonely, we don't need to go meet new people at a bar or at church or something like that. We need to identify the people we already know and say, how can I go closer to these people? And so I encourage people to write on a post-it note 3 to 5 names of people that you've met, people you already know, people you consider friends, that if given a little bit more priority and intention, might turn these into more meaningful, sustaining relationships. I'm just going to do them in order. And once you've identified those people, question 2 would be, then what can I do so I don't blow that? And like my latest book would go into this more, or I've got a ton of videos on YouTube for this as well. But I basically teach the healthy relationships as a triangle. And when we look at all the social science, I won't get into all of that here and now, but when we look at all the social science, there's 3 things that show up in every healthy relationship. At the bottom of every single relationship is positive emotions. The triangle starts with, we need to enjoy and feel good around the people we choose to be friends with. So at the very beginning, we want to feel better about ourselves and our lives for hanging out with each other. So we need to have positive emotion. 5 positive emotions for every negative emotion, to be exact. And then the other 2 requirements of every relationship is consistency, shared experiences, regular interaction. This is where the workplace comes into place, the proximity we have, the frequency that we can have, the history that we can build. This is the time we log together. And then the third requirement is vulnerability. And vulnerability is where we share our lives with each other, our opinions and our stories, our things that we're proud of, things that we're struggling with, just saying I need help, apologizing, all kinds. There's like thousands of things that show up under being able to share and be seen. but this is how we feel like we know each other. And so once we've identified these 3 to 5 people that we want to grow closer to, we know that we need to be regular with them, and we need to see them as frequently as we can, or interact with them as frequently as we can. And each time we interact, we want to practice some vulnerability and some positivity. We want to get to know each other a little bit more. So we both need to share, we both need to listen, we both need to ask questions, and we need to make sure that the other person feels good for having hung out with us. That means not feeling judged, not being given advice, adding some laughter, adding affirmation, adding validation. The more they feel good when they're around us, the more they're going to want to be consistent with us and show up and spend more time with us. The more they spend time with us, the more we'll get to know them. But we keep practicing these 3 things, and I can guarantee everybody, I can guarantee that you practice these 3 things with anybody and you will bond with them, and you will bond them to you. So we do know what it takes to build closer relationships. So I don't want to just do a monologue. I'll pass it back to you, but I know that
I really love
yeah.
I really love this, but I guess what I'm doing is I'm sort of sitting there and thinking, man, so first off, what if I have a bunch of acquaintances like that and I don't actually like any of them?
But why don't you like them? Is it because you're not?
I know, maybe it's my fault, right? So no, but I think there are people that actually feel that way. I guess the thing that what I wonder about is that how do I actually, how do I actually make that happen in real life? I mean, do I come to you, Shasta, and say, hey, Shasta, I'm feeling this loss in my life and I'm really trying to build some better relationships. Is it that blunt? I mean, that's a really scary thing to say.
That is really blunt. And I would say it depends on the level of relationship you've had with that person, right? If it's somebody you've known for years and you want it to like go deeper, maybe the really honest approach is the way to go. With a lot of us, it's if we were really honest, like if you look at the triangle, if a relationship's not feeling meaningful, it's because vulnerability is most likely missing. And that means that you need to share more. We need to like practice hearing each other's hearts more, right? If the relationship's not feeling satisfying, it's because positive emotions are missing. We just aren't having fun together. We're not affirming each other. I'm not leaving. When I see their name on my phone, I go, oh, and so like we've lost the ability to bring each other joy, and that would be what needs to be increased. If we don't feel like we can trust the relationship, it's the consistency piece that's been broken. So we can identify what any relationship needs and start practicing increasing that one area for sure. But I think if a relationship's not feeling like, for your case, for most of us, we would name some of our friends and our brain will be like, well, that's as close as I can get to that person. It's not true. It's just simply not true. If you look at every relationship in your life, you've developed a pattern with them. One pattern is you talk every week on the phone. Another pattern is you get together when you see each other in that town, and you see each other once a year, and that's the only time. And it's great when you see each other, but just once a year. And another pattern is you text each other. Every relationship gets a pattern of how often and what you do together and how often you talk. And that pattern can be changed in every single relationship. So we can call them more soon before another month has passed. Or at the end of one lunch, we can say, you know what? I've noticed every time I have lunch with you, I'm always so glad I had lunch with you. Let's not leave it to chance to let's just schedule the next one right now. Are you up for that? Like, I would love to just have it in my calendar to look forward to. And then just schedule that next lunch, and just increase the frequency a bit. The science is showing that the more often we interact, the more supported we feel, because we're not now updating each other on our lives. We're actually sharing our lives with each other. There's a big difference between catching someone up and actually going through it with them. So the more frequently we can talk to people is so key. Most of us, when we're lonely, it's for this one. It's if we could just interact a little bit more frequently and be a little bit more honest and revealing, and then make sure we end by just saying thank you and like letting them know we appreciate them. Like that can build a relationship so much deeper over a couple of months easily.
So it's so interesting you say this. So I have a friend of mine who lives on the other side of the country, and I got a message through, I don't know whether it was a text message, anyway, some sort of text message who said, are we still friends? I haven't heard from you. And it was just, I felt a little guilty about it, but it was that level of vulnerability was really, really nice. And I have, since I've reached out and we haven't actually talked yet, but we will probably today or tomorrow and the next couple of days, we'll do that. And so, but it's really when you can do that. The other thing that I was really thinking as you were talking about, when you pick up your cell phone and it's ringing and you look at it and you see somebody's name, and there's some people where you go, oh yes, and other people where you go, not them again. But maybe another way of thinking about it is if you call somebody and they see your name, how do they feel about that, right? Because it may
Totally.
be, maybe I'm the problem. Maybe if I don't, I mean, and I guess this is part of the question I have for you is maybe if I don't have the friendships, maybe I'm actually the one with the problem and not them.
Well, I think it's all of the above. I don't think any of us have been taught how to do relationship. I don't think any of us have taken classes on it. Most people aren't buying books on it. We think it's just going to come to us intuitively, but this is the most important area of our life that affects our health, it affects our success, our joy, our happiness. Research out there. I was giving you some of the health research on a happiness research level. They take all the happiness studies that have ever been done, and there's a quote by Dr. Niven, and he says people think it's ambiguous what happiness is, and he goes, the research just simply shows 70% of our happiness comes from our relationships, like 70%. And so when you look at that, you're just like, you can get everything else you think you need in life to be happy, and it's going to add up to 30%. Like, it's virtually impossible. This is the most important area of our entire lives, and yet most of us have never been taught that. So have compassion on ourselves that we might not have shown up well. Have compassion on them that they are scared to interact and are getting busy and distracted. Like, we can be compassionate. And I love your questions. I love, how do people feel when they see my name call? How do people feel when they leave my presence? Because here's the thing, if they feel good, they will want to interact. Like, we don't even consciously think that, but we gravitate to the people who make us feel good. We gravitate to the people who we think like us, right? Like, we want to feel liked. And so with the more we can communicate to other people that we like them, that we're not judging them, that we see things in them that we admire, the more we can tell them, like, help them feel good about their lives, the more they're going to want to practice that consistency and vulnerability, especially post pandemic. Even pre pandemic, I have an assessment that I score people on, and they get a score in these three areas. And it's the positive emotion is the lowest collectively. We just aren't great at really telling people how, like, helping them feel that we love them, which is crazy. But we always walk away and people are like, I hope I said the right thing, I hope I was interesting enough, and we have all these self-doubts. Anything we can say to somebody that helps them not feel that self-doubt is so powerful. So yeah, we really want to focus on that. The quote, and Maya Angelou has a quote that just popped into my head, and she talks about people will forget what you said and they will forget what you did, but they will never forget how you made them feel. And those are the same three things of the triangle. They'll forget what you said, which is vulnerability, which is important, and they'll forget what you did, which is how we spent time together, but they'll never forget how they made you feel, which is that positive emotion. We need all three, but it's got to really start with how we're helping people feel good. And that can go back to the workplace. We can take that straight into the workplace, because people will want to come to work if they feel good and if they feel liked and if they feel connected when they
Yeah.
come.
So how do I do this in the workplace? I've got people working little senior living background. I'm sure you got some familiarity, but we've got, in any building, you've got, sort of executive leadership and executive director, and usually a marketing director kind of at the higher level, and then you'll have some department heads, and then you have some frontline workers. And a lot of that's also complicated because oftentimes we have some ethnic and even some language big and educational big differentials from top to bottom. And so but even if I'm just saying, how do I make those, any thoughts on how I make my workplace better?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's worth doing for all of us, anybody who's struggling with retention, with recruitment, with productivity, with workplace accidents. All of those numbers are impacted and directly correlated to how many friends and how accepted and how much belonging our employees have with each other. There's so much research out there. I just wrote, my latest book is called The Business of Friendship, and it's stockpiled with, I just did all the latest research on the workplace, and some of it's been out for 20 years. I mean, Gallup for 20 years has been telling us that our employees who have a best friend at work are 7 times more engaged in their job. Like, I would be impressed if that statistic said 2 times more engaged. I don't even know how somebody can be 7 times more engaged, but it's like, that is an impressive correlation, and they need a best friend at work. So you go back to that triangle, my friends, and you start thinking, how am I helping my employees spend time together? Am I giving them space and time? When we look at the consistency and the time together, they're all showing up at the same place. This is why workplace is the number one place we're making friends as adults, is because the consistency piece is kind of there, kind of like when we were kids in school. But now the question is there a space? Is there an actual place where they can interact? Is there something for them to do there? Companies are putting big coloring things up on the walls or a puzzle out on the table. Are there excuses for them to come and gather and interact with each other? When we walk by as managers, do they quickly stop talking? Have we created a culture where they think that they're like, can't be seen interacting, or that's a waste of time? As managers, the number one thing we need to be doing right off the bat that's so easy is say, we've read the research and we want you to have friends here. Like, we want you to have relationships. We are happy. So when we see people interacting, we just should be smiling and saying, I love seeing you guys connect and talk and catch up a tiny bit. It's good to see you guys. And let them be affirmed for that. Like, it's not something we need to hide. That's one of the biggest things that came out of my research, is that people want a friend at work, but when you ask them the question, does your organization or your supervisor want you to have a friend at work? The numbers are like 20% of only like 20% of us actually think that's a true statement. Like, we want a friend and we know it's good for us. We say we'll stay longer. We show we have more energy. We love, like, we won't call in sick if we're not sick. We don't want to leave our people stranded. Like, we feel more loyal to the job, but we don't know that you want us to have those relationships. So managers and leaders, the number one thing we need to be doing is giving permission for it, encouraging it. There's companies doing great things now where they're giving gift cards to employees to go out to hang out with each other, to go out for a dinner, to, grab lunch together, making lunch together. I mean, doing everything you can to help them interact with each other and give them that space and time. And I know it's hard to do because we want to be in front of our patients and we want to be in front of, like, doing all the things that we need to be doing. But if you want them to stay, they have to feel supported by each other. And another thing for your industry is resilience, I would imagine. So when we look at what builds resilience in our employees and what prevents burnout, what helps them like have a hard day on loss of a patient, something that feels really tragic, these sadnesses, these areas that we can't control, the number one thing connected to resiliency is, do I feel supported here with the other people who are going through this with me? And so it comes back to the positivity, consistency, and vulnerability. We have to provide space to talk about it and to end up bringing validation to it and encouragement to it. And so all three of these things just have to keep showing up if we care about our employees or our product or our service or anything. I mean, they're all landing on these three things, in my opinion.
Okay, so we got about 3 minutes left. I want to give some concrete steps here. So I'm going to come back to sort of self-care for a second. I'm somebody who's saying, okay, Shasta, you're right. I do not have those deep relationships. What's one or two things that I can do today?
You can name one or two people in your life that you wish you had closer friends with and call them. And you can actually say, you know what? I've been thinking about friendship a lot lately, and you're one of the people that I really I would love to spend more time with you. I'd love to interact with you more. I haven't always been good at reaching out regularly, but I affirm them. Just be like, you're somebody who I would love to interact with more. So you're going to start hearing from me a little bit more often. Okay. Just warn them and then just hold yourself to it and like, let them know that's affirmation. So yeah, do it. Reach out.
Yeah, and I'm actually thinking right now. I'm sitting here. When I get off this, I think I'm actually gonna do that. I've got that the person who messaged me and said, "Are we still friends?" I'm gonna put a bigger push on connecting with that person today. And she actually might even be watching this, so watch out. I'm going to be calling, and
I love it.
And then and I think this other part about just creating a work environment where people feel like it's safe and it's comfortable and they're encouraged to have friends. But maybe there's one other thing about the workplace that I think I'd like to have you at least talk a little bit about. Oftentimes there are cliques at work, and those cliques fight each other, and so and yet those are friendships, but it's kind of toxic. What do you do about that?
Yeah, that's a tricky one. I have a whole chapter in my book on that because often what we call a clique is just people who know each other better, people who've practiced the triangle with each other. They've spent time, they know each other, and they enjoy being around with each other. And so sometimes what we call a clique is just closer friends, and it recognizes that when I feel left out, it's not that I'm being excluded. I just recognize that I haven't practiced those three things with them. So the number one thing we can do is just say, you know what, bonding takes time. I will keep practicing positive emotion, consistent time, and vulnerable sharing in appropriate ways with these people, with them as individually, and I will just slowly build my own bond. Because here's the truth. It's like we're mad scientists. We can bond anybody to us that we want. We know the three things. So we can kind of just start building relationships. We don't have to like be mad at them or and I get that there's other dynamics here. I think in general though, often we are not being excluded. We just simply don't feel like we belong, and there's a difference. And what we can start doing is start interacting with a few of them in smaller ways, one-on-one, saying nice things to them, affirming them, having a little, asking them some questions, getting to know them. And we can kind of just start building our relationships there. And we can do that. We don't have to wait to be invited by them. We can come in and interact with people. And we can also find other people who aren't feeling a part of that. When I come in and teach workshops, I think that's one of the biggest things we talk about is if you do have friendships at work, let them be a blessing to everybody else in the workplace. Like, let your relationship be something that creates an environment of friendliness for everybody else. Like, let your friendships bring people together. I don't love it when they get all tight and give anybody that feeling of exclusiveness. We all need to practice opening that circle up in the workplace for sure.
So when you did the workshop that I attended, one of the comments that was made by somebody in the audience was, I've really already got enough friends. What do you do with that?
I'm okay with that as long as, that to me, it's each of us needs to say, the bigger question is how loved and supported do you feel? And if somebody says, I feel like I've got the relationships I can maintain right now and I feel good, then I'm okay with that. The research also shows that the more relationships we try to maintain, the lonelier we're going to be. A lot of women, especially, we feel like we're not only maintaining our relationships, we're maintaining our husband's family relationships, we're maintaining we're maintaining the relationships for our kids, and their loneliness is going up because they're trying to stay in touch with too many people, right? And so I think there's a gift to just being able to say, I know who my people are, I'm interacting and hanging out, and I can always be kind to anybody and be gracious, and we can include people where needed. But I'm okay with people not needing to be in constant networking mode and building relationships with everybody mode. I think our brains can only take so much, and there's a lot going on. But here's the thing: is you need more than one or two, because we've all heard. I have heard all the stories of people who think they have their one best friend or their sister or whatever, and we end up becoming very resentful of them when they can't meet all of our needs, when they're not there for us. No one person's meant to be there for us all the time. Like, we need a group of people in a community, a web. And so I would encourage, I think somewhere between only having one or zero and having too many, like, each person can find their number of what feels
And
best.
it's not the same for everybody.
It's not. It's subjective. It's kind of like saying how many calories does a person need to eat every day? Like, it's different for people, right? And what you need to eat looks different. But we know you need to eat. We know you need nourishment.
Yeah, I think the place where I see it as being really a significant problem is maybe perhaps at work. If somebody comes in and there's already a group of close friends and they feel like they don't need any more friends, it can make it very lonely. And so
For sure.
I think from a leadership standpoint, that becomes really important to be aware of and leave room for growth.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree. And I think the triangle is it's shown as levels of relationship, right? Every relationship starts at the bottom as a brand new relationship that has very little positive emotion, consistency, or vulnerability. Our closest, deepest, tightest, bestest friends are at the top of the triangle. And we can only practice high vulnerability, high consistency, and high expressed love with a few people. I mean, we just can't be that consistent and vulnerable with everybody. But most of our relationships will be somewhere on that triangle. And everybody that we work with needs to be on that triangle where I'm at least interacting with them, I'm sharing a little bit, and I'm being kind, right? So we just need to understand there's different expectations. Back to your earlier point, not expecting people not everyone's going to be at the top of the triangle, but we still have them on our triangle, and we still expect ourselves to be friendly and kind and respectful to everybody. Absolutely.
Cool. Okay, so we're out of time. How do people find you?
ShastaNelson.com. I'm on all the social medias too.
Google her, find her on social media. If you are an event planner, reach out to her, have her come in and do a keynote or a workshop. It is great stuff. It'll make your organization stronger. It'll make your life better. So Shasta, thank you very much for being with us here today. And with that, we are going to say goodbye.